In this video, we're going to introduce you to scaling surfaces, a tool that allows you to easily scale object positions in your sound design to different listening environments, for example from the studio to the stage, or between venues as part of a tour. Scaling surfaces requires TiMax SoundHub version 6.10 or later. If you need to update, head on over to timaxspatial.com and download the latest version. As you'll know, with TiMax SoundHub you can create complex spatial designs with an almost unlimited number of cues containing movement automation. But what happens if we want to move all this automation to a different space? Maybe we're touring a production between venues or working offline in a studio environment. That's where scaling surfaces come in. When an object is attached to a scaling surface and that surface is moved, all of the movement automation for that object across the entire show file moves with it. To explain this further, let's build our first scaling surface. Scaling surfaces can be found in a pan space layer between the image definition layer and the spatialization layer. We've placed the functionality here because scaling surfaces allow you to abstract your object positions away from the real-world coordinates of your venue and your loudspeakers. To allow us to visualize object positions, first make sure you've loaded a queue containing pan space objects, and then select the scaling surface layer. This list contains all the scaling surfaces found in the show file. Let's create our first scaling surface using the New Surface button. This scaling surface is going to incorporate our entire venue, so let's name it accordingly. You will see that TiMax SoundHub has created our first scaling surface within the pan space. Interacting with the surface will be immediately familiar to anyone who has manipulated an image in a photo editor, for example. Each scaling surface is displayed with 8 drag handles to manipulate the size and shape of the surface, and we can change the overall position of the surface by clicking and dragging it around the pan space. We can also change the size and position of the surface using these text fields in the left-hand pane. The scaling surface is a 3D cube, and we can manipulate the floor and ceiling Z position coordinates from these inputs here. We haven't added any objects to the surface yet, so we can fine-tune its size and position without moving anything unintentionally. Once we're happy with the overall position of the scaling surface, we can add some objects to it. To add objects to the scaling surface, select the Assign Objects button from here in the left-hand pane. You're presented with this list. The first column lists all 64 objects. The second column is currently empty, but will note the scaling surface assignment for the object. Remember, these assignments are global to the show file, so once you assign an object to a scaling surface, any changes to the surface will affect object positions across all cues in your show. We can multi-select items in the list in all the usual ways. I'm going to use the Command-A shortcut to select all 64 objects. Selecting a scaling surface from this drop-down will then assign that surface to all the selected objects. Click OK to store the updated assignments. Now all our objects have been added to the surface, any changes to the size and position of the scaling surface will affect all object positions across all cues in the show file. To demonstrate this, let's rescale this entire show file for playback across a 5.1 studio system. You will see that the 5.1 loudspeaker locations are already present in the pan space. To rescale, we can simply manipulate the drag handles to resize and position the scaling surface. If we change cues, you will see that the changes we made to the surface have affected all object positions throughout the show file.